Friends from the media, good afternoon. The press conference of the 5th session of the 13th National People's Congress now begins. The Presidium of the session just now held its first meeting and designated Mr. Zhang Yesui as the spokesperson of the session. He will brief you on the agenda and relevant arrangements of the session and take questions on the session's agenda and work of the NPC. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, friends from the media, welcome to the press conference of the 5th session of the 13th National People's Congress. Just now, the preparatory meeting of the 5th session adopted the agenda of the session. Of the 2,951 deputies to the 13th NPC, 2,801 have checked in. We now have everything ready for the session. The year 2021 was a milestone for the party and the country, and also a year of great importance in the history of the system of People's Congresses. The CPC Central Committee convened the first ever Central Conference on work related to People's Congresses, and General Secretary Xi Jinping delivered important remarks at the conference. The CPC Central Committee issued opinions on upholding and improving the system of People's Congresses and enhancing and refining work related to People's Congresses. All this has pointed the way forward and provided guidance for carrying out sound work related to People's Congresses in the new era. Over the past year, under the strong leadership of the CPC Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, the NPC and its Standing Committee have performed duties and fulfilled responsibilities in accordance with the law and made new achievements and new progress on various fronts. The upcoming session of the 13th NPC will be an important meeting held at an important time when our country has embarked on a new journey to build a modern socialist country in all respects and to realize the second centenary goal. It is a major event in the political life of the Chinese people. The session will be held under the guidance of Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era. It will focus on the overarching priorities of the party and the country, earnestly exercise its functions and responsibilities as stipulated in the Constitution and other laws, and fulfill various tasks. It will be a democratic, results-oriented, and aspiring session of unity. The session will open on the morning of March the 5th and close on the morning of March the 11th. It will last 6.5 days. There are 10 items on the agenda. First, to deliberate on the report on the work of the government. Second, to review the report on the implementation of the 2021 Plan for National Economic and Social Development and the 2022 Draft Plan. Third, to review the report on the execution of the central and local budgets for 2021 and the draft plan for 2022. Fourth, to deliberate on the bill of the draft amendment to the organic law of the local people's congresses and the local people's governments of the People's Republic of China. Fifth, to deliberate on the bill of the draft decision of the 5th session of the 13th National People's Congress on the number of deputies to the 14th National People's Congress and the election of the deputies. Sixth, to deliberate on the bill of the draft measure for election of deputies of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region of the People's Republic of China to the 14th National People's Congress. Seventh, to deliberate on the bill of the draft measure for election of deputies of the Macau Special Administrative Region of the People's Republic of China to the 14th National People's Congress. Eighth, to deliberate on the report on the work of the NPC Standing Committee. Ninth, to deliberate on the report on the work of the Supreme People's Court. And 10th, to deliberate on the report on the work of the Supreme People's Procuratorate. Press conferences interviews at the deputies' corridor and the ministers' corridor and other media stakeouts will be conducted via video link. For relevant documents of the session, reporting materials, and interview contacts, please follow the updates on the web page of the press center of the session. A spokesperson will be designated for each delegation, and video interview rooms under the press center of the session will be set up at where the delegations are staying to facilitate virtual interviews of deputies and deputies' interactions with netizens on relevant topics through online interviews and social media live streaming. During the session, necessary protocols will be implemented to ensure sound COVID-19 containment. The session will strictly follow the CPC Central Committee's 8-point decision on improving party and government conduct and its implementation regulations. We will make continuous efforts to improve the organization of the session and relevant services. The session will practice economy, prohibit extravagance, and uphold the principles of simplicity and pragmatism. I wish you every success in your work. Thank you.
The floor is now open for questions.
请南区第2排第1位男士提问，谢谢。
谢谢主持人，发言人好，我是中央广播电视总台央视记者。我们注意到，过去1年全国人大及其常委会新制定的法律就有17件。那么，想请问发言人，您如何解读过去1年的立法工作？立法节奏这么快，会不会影响到立法的质量？如何真正做到以良法促进发展，保障善治？谢谢。
China Media Group and CCTV. We have noticed that in 2021, the MPC and its standing committee formulated as many as 17 pieces of new legislation. So, Mr. Spokesperson, how would you describe the legislative work of the MPC and its standing committee over the past year? Given such a fast tempo, has it actually affected the quality of legislation? And what have been the efforts put in to ensure that a sound legislative work could really support development and good governance? Thank you.
谢谢你的提问。在过去的1年中，全国人大及其常委会围绕党和国家事业发展需要，加强重点领域、新兴领域、涉外领域立法，坚持科学立法、民主立法、依法立法。在立法提速的同时，更加注重提升立法的质量和立法的社会效果。
Thank you for the question. In the past year, the National People's Congress and its Standing Committee had focused on the overarching priorities of the party and the country, and intensified efforts to bring forward legislation in key sectors, emerging areas, and foreign-related fields. We saw to it that the legislative process followed a well-thought-out, democratic, and law-based approach. While picking up the pace, we had actually paid greater attention to the quality of legislation and their social effects.
在加强宪法实施和监督方面，主要是全面修改香港基本法附件1和附件2，形成一套符合香港法律地位和实际情况的民主选举制度，维护宪法和香港基本法确定的香港特别行政区宪制秩序，确保一国两制行稳致远，制定监察官法，为正确行使监察权提供法律保障。
In promoting the implementation of the Constitution and its supervision, we have mainly comprehensively revised Annex 1 and 2 to the Basic Law of the Hong Kong SAR to put in place a democratic electoral system that suits Hong Kong's legal status and actual circumstances, to uphold the constitutional order in the Hong Kong SAR as established by the Constitution and the Basic Law, and ensure sound implementation of one country, two systems in the long run. We also enacted the Supervisory Officers Law to provide legal safeguard for the exercise of supervisory power as intended.
在贯彻新发展理念、推动高质量发展方面，主要是制定海南自由贸易港法，助力在法治轨道上打造我国开放型经济新高地；制定乡村振兴促进法，为全面实施乡村振兴战略提供坚实法律保障。
In applying new development philosophy to pursue high-quality development, we mainly enacted the law on the Hainan Free Trade Port to help nurture new pace setter of China's open economy with legal support. We have made the law on the promotion of rural vitalization in order to provide sound legal underpinning for the all-round implementation of the strategy to revive the countryside.
在健全国家安全法治体系方面，主要是制定反外国制裁法，完善反制裁、反干涉、反制长臂管辖的法律制度，制定陆地国界法，依法规范陆地国界管理制度，制定数据安全法，有效应对这一领域的国家安全风险与挑战。
In strengthening the legal framework for national security, major legislation includes the law on countering foreign sanctions, which improves the legal system to respond to sanctions, interference, and long-arm jurisdiction. We have the Land Borders Law to regulate the management of land borders in accordance with the law. We also introduced the Data Security Law to effectively cope with national security risks and challenges in this field.
在加强民生或社会领域立法方面，主要是制定反食品浪费法，杜绝舌尖上的浪费；制定个人信息保护法，对过度收集个人信息、大数据杀熟等作出规范；制定噪声污染防治法，有针对性地解决人民群众关心的噪声污染突出的问题。谢谢。
In enhancing legislation in livelihood and social fields, we have passed the law against food waste to stop waste at the dinner table. We have the Personal Information Protection Law that targets problems such as excessive collection of personal information and big data-enabled discriminatory pricing. We also formulated the law on prevention and control of noise pollution to address this particular problem, which has been a growing concern of the general public. Thank you.
谢谢，请继续提问。请北区第3排第2位男士提问，谢谢。
谢谢主持人。日本经济新闻记者提问：中国的动态清零防疫政策毋庸置疑取得了很大成功，但另一方面，由于对出现疫情的地区实行封闭管控，辖区内工厂停产、物流停滞，这些对经济运行的负面影响也不容忽视。中国作为世界工厂，如果在经济运行和物流运输等方面出现问题，将直接对全球供应链产生重大冲击。国际社会对此的担心也在增加。请问，今后中国政府如何在坚持动态清零政策与保持经济平稳运行、维护全球供应链稳定之间达成平衡？谢谢。
Nihon Keizai Shimbun. There is no doubt that China's dynamic zero-COVID policy has been quite successful. On the other hand, however, when there is an outbreak in certain area, a lockdown is imposed with factories and logistics halted. This has negative implications on the economy, which cannot be overlooked. As the world factory, any glitches in China's economy and logistics would directly impact the global supply chain in a profound way, and there has been growing concern in the international community. So what will the Chinese government do to strike a balance between keeping in place the dynamic zero-COVID policy and maintaining steady operation of its economy and stability of the global supply chain? Thank you.
好，谢谢你的问题。动态清零是在坚持外防输入、内防反弹总策略，认真总结各地经验教训的基础上提出的防控方针。这个方针呢，主要有3个方面的内容。第一是及时主动发现传染源；第二是快速采取公共卫生或社会干预措施，追踪管理密接人员等，切断传播途径。第三呢是有效救治患者。
Thank you for the question. This dynamic zero-COVID approach is taken up under the overall strategy of preventing case importation from abroad and forestalling resurgence at home. It is built on careful study of the past containment experience in various regions of the country. There are mainly 3 aspects to this approach. First, proactively and in a timely manner detect the source of infection. Second, activate as quickly as possible public health and social intervention measures to track down and manage close contacts and other related people to cut off the route of transmission. Third, provide effective treatment to the infected cases.
这个做法的目标是通过快速精准的全链条防控措施，实现以最小成本取得最大成效。动态清零不是要追求零感染，而是要尽快把疫情控制住。
The goal of this approach is to use this rapid, well-targeted whole process approach to get the maximum results with as little cost as possible. It is by no means meant for zero infection, but to put outbreaks whenever they emerge under control in the shortest time possible.
去年以来，中国内地疫情出现多点散发，部分城市呢采取了一系列防控措施。虽然这些措施对生产生活产生一些影响，但这些影响是短期的，波及的范围也是有限的。它可以保证全国绝大多数地区和绝大多数人正常的生产生活。
Since last year, the mainland has seen multiple outbreaks in different regions. Some cities have responded with a host of measures. Although such measures have put some strains on their economic activities and people's lives, the impacts are short-term and with limited scope. This approach can ensure that most regions and for most people, their lives and the economy can go on in a normal way.
当然，任何防控措施都会有一些代价，但是同保护人民生命安全和身体健康相比，这些代价是值得的。
Of course, any containment measures would entail some costs, but in the face of the life, safety, and health of the people, these costs are just worthwhile.
事实证明，动态清零的做法符合中国的实际情况，路子是对的，效果是好的。无论从确诊、死亡的数字看，还是从经济发展的数据看，中国都是世界上防疫工作最成功的国家之一。
What has happened shows that this approach has worked in China's context. It is the right way to go, and the results are good. All the figures be it the number of infections and fatalities and economic data, all show that China is one of the countries in the world who are most successful in curbing the pandemic.
正是坚持了有力有效的防控措施，中国在保持自身经济社会发展的同时，为维护全球产业链、供应链的稳定畅通和世界经济的增长，做出了重要的贡献。谢谢。
It is because we have all along kept to rigorous and effective prevention and control policy that China has been able to maintain its economic and social development and at the same time make important contribution to keeping the global industrial and supply chains stable and smooth and to help drive the growth of the world economy. Thank you.
谢谢，请继续提问。请南区第3排第3位男士提问，谢谢。
谢谢主持人。人民日报记者提问：习近平总书记在庆祝中国共产党成立100周年大会上的重要讲话提出，要发展全过程人民民主。请问发言人，全过程人民民主是一个什么样的民主？中国将如何发展和完善全过程人民民主？谢谢。
People's Daily. In his important remarks at the ceremony marking the centenary of the Communist Party of China, General Secretary Xi Jinping highlighted the need to develop whole process people's democracy. My question is, what kind of democracy is it? And what will China do to develop and improve this whole process people's democracy? Thank you.
谢谢你的提问。全过程人民民主是以习近平同志为核心的党中央，在深化对中国民主政治发展规律性认识的基础上提出的重大理念。这个理念呢，有2个关键词，一个是人民民主，一个是全过程。
Thank you for the question. Whole process people's democracy is a major concept put forward by the party leadership with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, based on a deep understanding on the laws of the development of China's democracy. There are 2 key words to this concept. One is people's democracy, and the other is whole process.
人民民主是社会主义的生命，人民当家作主是社会主义民主政治的本质和核心。中国宪法规定，国家的一切权利属于人民，人民依照法律规定，通过各种途径和形式管理国家事务，管理经济或文化事业，管理社会事务。
People's democracy is the life of socialism. People being the master of the country is the defining and central feature of socialist democracy. China's constitution provides that all powers of the state belongs to the people, and the people, in accordance with the law, through various channels and in various ways, manage state affairs, economic and cultural undertakings, and social affairs.
全过程是全体人民依法实行民主选举、民主协商、民主决策、民主管理、民主监督，保证人民当家作主，具体的、现实的落实到国家和社会生活之中。
Whole process means that all Chinese people engage in democratic elections, consultations, decision-making, management, and oversight in accordance with law. This ensures that the principle of people running the country is put into practice in China's state and social activities in a concrete way.
中国发展全过程人民民主，不仅有完整的制度程序，而且有完整的参与实践。中国实行人民代表大会制度的政体，实行中国共产党领导的多党合作和政治协商制度，民主区域自治制度， 基层群众自治制度等基本政治制度，巩固和发展最广泛的爱国统一战线，形成了全面、广泛、有机、衔接的人民当家作主的制度体系。以宪法为核心的中国特色社会主义法律体系，包括选举法、代表法、全国人大组织法、立法法、监督法等一系列法律制度安排，为发展全过程人民民主提供了坚实的法律保障。
For China's whole process people's democracy, it is underpinned by a well-established set of institutional procedures and full participation and practice. Institution-wise, we have the system of people's congresses as the political system. We also have a number of other basic political systems, such as the CPC-led system of multi-party cooperation and political consultation, the system of regional ethnic autonomy, the system of public self-governance at the primary level, and we seek to consolidate and develop a broad, patriotic, united front. These have formed a comprehensive, broad-based, and integrated institutional framework to ensure the country is run by the people. In the field of law, we have the Chinese socialist system of laws with the Constitution at its heart and a whole set of institutional arrangements, including the electoral law, the deputies law, the organic law of the National People's Congress, the legislation law, and the supervision law. Together, they provide a solid legal safeguard for the development of the whole process people's democracy.
人民代表大会制度是实现我国全过程人民民主的重要制度载体。各级人大在发展全过程人民民主中承担着重要职责，要在党的领导下扩大人民有序政治参与，加强人权法治保障，保证人民依法享有广泛权利和自由，保证人民的知情权、参与权、表达权、监督权落实到人大工作的各方面、各环节、全过程，要完善人大的民主民意表达平台和载体，把各项工作建立在坚实的民意基础上，推动实现好、维护好、发展好最广大人民的根本利益。
This democracy has people's congresses as an important institutional vehicle. People's congresses at all levels shoulder important duties and responsibilities in developing the whole process people's democracy. Under the leadership of the party, they work to expand the orderly political participation of the people, strengthen legal protection of human rights, ensure that the people enjoy extensive rights and freedoms as prescribed by law, and see to it that people's rights to be informed, to participate, to be heard, and to oversee is implemented in every dimension, link, and aspect of the MPC's work. People's Congresses also seek to provide better platforms and channels for people to express their opinions and base their work on solid and sound public support so as to meet, protect, and advance the fundamental interests of our people.
民主不是装饰品，不是用来做摆设的，而是要用来解决人民需要解决的问题的。一个国家民主不民主，实践最有说服力，这个国家的人民最有发言权。
Democracy is not an ornament just to look good. Democracy is about solving problems for the people. Whether a country is democratic or not, practice speaks the loudest, and the people of that country has the biggest say.
实践证明，中国特色社会主义民主政治制度是根植于中国历史文化，符合中国国情，解决中国问题的真实、有效、 管用的民主。
Practice has proved that the socialist democratic system with Chinese characteristics is a genuine and effective democracy that is rooted in China's history and culture, that is tailored to China's reality, and that provides answers to China's problems.
民主是全人类的共同价值。世界上不存在完全相同的民主制度，也不存在适合一切国家的民主模式。民主没有最好，只有更好。我们愿意在相互尊重的基础上，与各国交流互鉴，不断丰富和完善人类政治文明成果。谢谢。
Democracy is a common value of all humanity. There are no identical democratic systems in the world, nor is there a one-size-fits-all model of democracy. When it comes to democracy, there is always room for improvement. On the basis of mutual respect, we are willing to engage in exchanges and mutual learning with other countries to continuously enrich and better the fruits of human political civilization. Thank you.
谢谢，请继续提问。请北区第2排第3位男士提问，谢谢。
Bloomberg News. The U.S. Congress just passed the America Competes Act and is looking to pass the CHIPS for America Act, both of which aim to strengthen the U.S.'s ability to compete with China in semiconductors and in other industries. How will such legislation affect bilateral ties, and will China respond with similar legislation? Thank you.
美国彭博社，美国国会刚刚通过了美国竞争法案，目前正在酝酿通过美国芯片法案，目的都是要在半导体以及其他一些产业领域增强美国同中国竞争的能力。请问此类立法对于美中关系有何影响？中国是否将以类似的立法予以回应？谢谢。
好，谢谢你的提问。我先回答你提问的后半部分的内容，就是关于中美双边关系，然后再回答你提问的前半部分内容。
Thank you for the question. I will start with the latter part of your question, which is about China-US relations, and then I will come back to the first part.
去年11月，习近平主席同拜登总统举行视频会晤，就中美关系发展的战略性、全局性、根本性问题，以及共同关心的重要问题，进行了充分深入的沟通和交流。
In November last year, President Xi Jinping and President Biden had a virtual summit, and the two leaders had a thorough and in-depth communication and exchange on the strategic, overarching, and fundamental issues in China-US relations, as well as important issues of mutual interest.
中方对美政策是一贯和明确的，一个稳定的中美关系，既有利于中美各自发展，也有利于维护和平稳定的国际环境，有利于有效应对气候变化、新冠病毒疫情等全球性挑战。相互尊重、和平共处、合作共赢，应该成为新时期中美正确的相处之道。
China's policy toward the United States is consistent and clear-cut. A stable China-US relationship is good for the respective development of both countries. It is also conducive to maintaining a peaceful and stable international environment and conducive to effectively responding to climate change, COVID pandemic, and other global challenges. Mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and win-win cooperation should be the right approach for China and the US to get along with each other in the new era.
和平共处的关键是 相互尊重，包括尊重各自选择的政治制度和发展道路，尊重彼此的核心利益和重大关切，尊重不干涉内政等国际关系的基本准则。
The key to peaceful coexistence is mutual respect, including respecting each other's choice of political system and development path, respecting each other's core interests and major concerns, and respecting the basic norms of international relations, such as non-interference in internal affairs.
合作共赢，符合两国或两国人民的根本利益，也是国际社会的期待。
Win-win cooperation serves the fundamental interest of the two nations and two peoples. It is also the shared aspiration of the international community.
关于你问到的就是美国国会众院通过的有关竞争法案，我想强调，就是美国如何提升自身的竞争能力，包括芯片研发或制造能力，是美国自己的事情。但是以中国的发展为借口，把中国当作战略竞争对手的做法，只会破坏中美互信与合作，也必将损害美国的自身利益。
With regards to the bill passed by the House of the U.S. Congress, I would like to stress that how the United States chooses to raise its competitiveness, including the R&D and manufacturing capacity of chips, is its own matter. But to use China's development as an excuse and take China as a strategic rival, this will only erode the mutual trust and cooperation between the two countries and will eventually hurt the U.S. own interests.
我还想再强调一点，就是以意识形态划线、拉小圈子、搞集团对抗，都有悖于时代发展潮流，也根本行不通。谢谢。
I also want to underscore that to draw lines based on ideology, form small circles, and stoke confrontation between blocs, these are all acts against the trend of the times, and they will lead to nowhere. Thank you.
谢谢，请继续提问。请南区第4排第2位男士提问，谢谢。
您好，新华社记者。目前中国县乡两级的人大换届选举已经接近尾声。那人大代表选举有些什么特点？这些代表是如何在宪法和法律赋予的职权下行使参与国家这个权力的行使的？谢谢。
Xinhua News Agency. Elections of new deputies to people's congresses in counties and townships are drawing to an end. What can you tell us about the elections of deputies to people's congresses, and how do those deputies participate in exercising state power in accordance with the functions and powers entrusted by the Constitution and law? Thank you.
谢谢你的提问。人民代表大会制度是中国的根本政治制度，各级人大代表是本级人民代表大会的组成人员，代表人民的利益和意志，依法参加行使国家权力。
Thank you for the question. The system of people's congresses is China's fundamental political system. Congresses at all levels are made up by deputies who represent the interest and will of the people and take part in the exercise of state power in accordance with law.
中国共有5级人大代表，都由民主选举产生，每届任期5年。人大代表选举主要 有这么几个特点。
In China, there are 5 levels of people's congresses, and all the deputies are elected through democratic procedures with a 5-year term. The election of deputies has the following features.
一是实行直接选举和间接选举相结合的原则。按照上一轮换届选举的数据，中国共有各级人大代表262.3万，其中县乡两级人大代表247.8万，占代表总数的94.5%。他们都是按选区由选民一人一票选举产生的。全国省市3级人大代表是间接选举，由下一级人大选举产生。
First, the principle of combining direct election with indirect election. Data from the last round of election show that a total of 2.623 million deputies have been elected to the 5 levels of people's congresses. Among them, 2.4 or 94.5% are at the county and township level, and they are elected through one person, one vote by their constituencies. Deputies at the national, provincial, and municipal level are elected indirectly by the People's Congresses at the next level down.
二是具有最广泛的普遍性。改革开放以来，中国已经进行了12次乡级人大代表选举，11次县级人大代表选举，选民参选率都在90%左右。目前，全国县乡两级人大换届选举已经接近尾声，有超过10亿选民参加选举。
Second, most extensive participation. Since reform and opening up, China has held 12 elections of deputies at the township level and 11 at the county level. In all these elections, the voter turnout rate has been around 90%. Well, right now, the new round of elections in counties and townships are almost over, and a total of more than 1 billion voters have participated in the elections.
三是具有最广泛的代表性。选举法规定，各地区、各民族、各方面都要有适当数量的代表。对基层代表，特别是工人、农民、专业技术人员代表、妇女代表、少数民族代表等，都有明确要求。人大代表有各自的生产和工作岗位，既代表人民参加对国家事务的管理，又做好本质工作。
Third, broadest-based representation. According to China's electoral law, there shall be an appropriate number of deputies from each region, ethnic group, and body of people. There are also specific requirements in terms of the number of primary level deputies, in particular, workers, farmers, people with special skills, women, and ethnic minorities. Deputies to People's Congresses also hold jobs in different fields of work. As they take part in the management of state affairs on behalf of the people, they are still dedicated to and deliver on their daily job and work.
四是充分体现最广大人民的意愿，从根本上保证广大选民的选举权利。通过无记名投票、差额选举、组织代表候选人与选民见面等一系列制度安排，保证选民可以按照自己的意愿选出信任的人。谢谢。
Fourth, the will of the vast majority of the people is fully reflected to fundamentally guarantee people's right to vote. This is achieved through a number of institutional arrangements, such as secret ballot, the nomination of multiple candidates, face-to-face interactions between candidates and voters, This makes sure that people are able to select the candidates that they trust. Thank you.
谢谢，请继续提问。请北区第一排第4位男士提问。
发言人你好，俄通塔斯社记者提问。前不久，欧盟将中国对立陶宛采取的有关经贸限制措施，诉诸世贸组织争端解决机制。请问，中立关系目前是什么状况？是否存在中国对立陶宛的经济胁迫问题？谢谢。
Recently, the European Union filed a case at the WTO dispute settlement mechanism over the trade measures that China has taken against Lithuania. What is the current state of China-Lithuania relations? Has China pursued economic coercion against Lithuania? Thank you.
谢谢你的提问。一个中国原则是国际社会普遍共识和公认的国际关系准则，是中国同所有国家发展双边关系的政治基础。
Thank you for the question. The One China principle is a widely held international consensus and a commonly recognized norm of international relations. It is the political foundation for China to develop bilateral relations with all countries.
1991年，在中国同立陶宛签署的建交公报中，立陶宛政府承认中华人民共和国政府是中国的唯一合法政府，台湾是中国领土不可分割的一部分。而且明确承诺不和台湾建立官方关系和进行官方往来。
In 1991, in the communique on the establishment of diplomatic relations between China and Lithuania, Lithuania recognizes that the government of the People's Republic of China is the sole legal government representing China, and Taiwan is an inseparable part of the Chinese territory. It also clearly undertakes not to establish official relations or engage in official contacts with Taiwan.
去年11月，立陶宛政府宣布允许台湾当局设立所谓在立陶宛台湾代表处，这严重违反一个中国原则，违背立方在两国建交时所做的政治承诺。中国政府对此作出坚决回应，是完全正当、必然的。目前两国关系中出现的问题，责任完全在立方。
Last November, the government of Lithuania announced its decision to allow the Taiwan Authority to open the so-called the Taiwanese Representative Office in Lithuania. This gravely violates the One China principle and the political commitment that Lithuania made at the time when the two countries established diplomatic relations. The Chinese government has to respond resolutely, which is fully justified and necessary. For the current problem in the bilateral relations, all the responsibilities are on the Lithuanian side.
在国际贸易中，中国一向主张尊重世贸组织的规则，营造公平竞争的市场环境，从来不歧视任何国家、任何企业，因此不存在所谓经济胁迫问题。
In international trade, China always stands for compliance with WTO rules and a market environment for fair competition. China never discriminates against any country or enterprise. Therefore, there is no so-called economic coercion.
关于欧盟在世贸组织提起诉讼，我们认为这不具建设性。我们希望欧盟采取客观公正的立场，不要将中立之间的问题扩大化，或者呢是上升到中欧关系的层面。谢谢。
As to EU's case with the WTO, we think that it is not a constructive move. The Chinese side hopes that the EU could act with an objective and impartial position and not expand the issue, which is between China and Lithuania, or escalate it to China-EU relations. Thank you.
谢谢，请继续提问。请南区第2排第4位女士提问，谢谢。
谢谢亚洲新闻台记者提问。随着新冠肺炎疫情的继续蔓延，许多发展中国家目前还无法获得疫苗，尤其是 mRNA 疫苗。那中国一直在向世界各地运送疫苗，同时也在开发自己的 mRNA 疫苗。想请问发言人，中方是否有进一步计划与其他国家分享这类疫苗？有没有具体的时间表？这是否也是中国向外开放边境迈出的一步？谢谢。
Channel News Asia. The COVID pandemic is still spreading, but still many developing countries are unable to access vaccines, in particular the mRNA vaccines. We know that China has been shipping vaccines to different parts of the world, and it is also working on its own mRNA vaccines. So, Mr. Spokesperson, does China plan to share this type of vaccines with developing countries to make vaccine distribution more equitable? Is there a timetable for that? Is this also a step for China to open up its borders? Thank you.
谢谢你的提问。疫情爆发初期，习近平主席就郑重宣布，中国新冠疫苗研发完成并投入使用后，将作为全球公共产品。之后呢，习主席进一步提出了全球疫苗合作行动倡议，表示要确保疫苗作为全球公共产品得到公平分配，特别是要使发展中国家获益。
Thank you for the question. In the early stage of the pandemic, President Xi Jinping had solemnly pledged that Chinese vaccines will be a global public good once they are developed and available. Following that, President Xi Jinping further put forward a global vaccine cooperation action initiative, making clear that vaccines as a global public good should be distributed equitably, especially in a way that benefits developing countries.
我得到的最新数据是，就是到目前为止，中国已经向120多个国家和国际组织提供了超过21亿剂疫苗，占中国以外全球疫苗使用总量的1/3，是对外提供疫苗最多的国家。
According to the latest data that I have, to date, China has provided over 2.1 billion doses of vaccines to over 120 countries and international organizations. This accounts for 1/3 of the total vaccines administered around the world outside of China. It makes China the largest provider of vaccines.
当然，这120多个国家中，绝大多数是发展中国家。中国提供的疫苗为很多发展中国家构筑免疫屏障，恢复社会生活发挥了重要作用，增强了发展中国家抗疫的能力、信心和决心。
Among the 120 plus countries, most of them are developing countries. The vaccines provided by China have played an important role in helping many developing countries build a defense of immunization and bring their economy and life back to normalcy. It has also boosted developing countries' capacity, confidence, and determination to beat the pandemic.
中国将继续坚持把发展中国家作为疫苗合作的主要伙伴。近期，习近平主席宣布，将再向非洲国家提供10亿剂疫苗，其中6亿剂为无偿援助，4亿剂以中方企业与有关非洲国家联合生产等方式提供，助力非洲国家实现非盟确定的2022年60%非洲人口接种疫苗的目标，再向东盟国家提供约1.5亿剂的疫苗无偿援助。
Going forward, China will continue to prioritize developing countries as major partners in vaccine cooperation. Recently, President Xi Jinping announced another 1 billion doses of vaccines for African countries. 600 million will be donations and 400 million will be provided through joint production between Chinese companies and relevant African countries. This aims to help the continent realize the goal set by the African Union to vaccinate 60% of the African population in 2022. In addition, China will also provide another 150 million doses to ASEAN countries.
中国也一直高度重视并积极推动疫苗研发、生产、分配的国际合作。中国的一些企业也同多个发展中国家合作生产并灌装疫苗，同多个发展中国家签署联合生产疫苗协议，初步形成了超过10亿剂的年产能。
When it comes to vaccines, China has all along attached great importance to and actively facilitated international cooperation on their research and development, production, and distribution. Chinese companies have partnered with many developing countries on vaccine co-production and fill and finish, and many Chinese companies have signed co-production agreements with a number of developing countries, with an initial annual capacity of over 1 billion doses.
关于你刚才提到的新冠 mRNA， 据我了解，国内的一些企业正在进行研发，而且取得了积极的进展。谢谢。
As to the mRNA vaccines, as far as I know, some Chinese companies are now working on the R&D, and they have already made some good progress. Thank you.
谢谢。因为时间的原因，现在请提最后一个问题。
In the interest of time, we will take one more question.
请北区第5排第1位男士提问，谢谢。北区第5排第1位男士，谢谢。
谢谢主持人，发言人您好，我是香港大公文汇传媒的记者。去年的时候，全国人大通过了反外国制裁法，然后我们想问发言人，制定这部法律的目的是什么？谢谢。
Hong Kong Taikong Wenhui-Bo. We know that last year, the National People's Congress adopted the law on countering foreign sanctions, and we would like to know what is the purpose to make this legislation. Thank you.
好，谢谢你的提问。通过立法反制外国制裁、干涉和长臂管辖，是很多国家的通常做法。
Thank you for the question. It's a common practice in many countries to respond to foreign sanctions, interference, and long-arm jurisdiction through legislation.
中国的反外国制裁法是一部 指向性、针对性很强的专门法律，突出的是一个反字。中国不惹事，但也不怕事儿。对于那些动辄挥舞制裁大棒的霸凌行径，中国通过反外国制裁法等法律手段，坚定维护国家主权、安全和发展利益，保护中国公民组织的合法权益。
This law on countering foreign sanctions that China enacted is a specialized legislation with a clear purpose. It is all about countering. China does not seek to provoke trouble, but it will not flinch should trouble come its way. Facing those acts of bullying, including arbitrary wielding of sanctions, China resorts to legal means, including the law on foreign sanctions in this case, to safeguard in a resolute way the country's sovereignty, security, and development interests, and to protect the lawful rights and interests of Chinese citizens and institutions.
中国一贯主张在坚持和平共处、五项原则的基础上，发展同各国的友好关系，一贯反对霸权主义和强权政治。中国的反外国制裁法是应对遏制打压的防御措施，与一些国家的单边制裁应该说有本质的区别。谢谢。
It's been China's consistent position to grow friendly relations with all countries on the basis of the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence, and we all along stand against hegemonism and power politics. This legislation is a defensive step to counter containment and oppression, which is, it is fair to say, essentially different from the unilateral sanctions pursued by some countries. Thank you.
谢谢媒体朋友们，今天的新闻发布会到此结束，谢谢发言人，谢谢大家，再见。
This concludes the press conference. Thank you.